Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as ever, it's a pleasure and a privilege to stand to speak to a bill of settlement. And I, on behalf of the Greens, would acknowledge the presence in the House today of representatives of Ngati Apa, and also to acknowledge their long struggle, the courage and determination that has been shown over many, many decades to bring to fruition what will be passed in the House today. We will, of course, continue to support this bill, as we have supported this bill throughout its various readings, and as indeed we will continue to support bills that restore the recognition of mana, that recognise kaitiaki status, and that seek to redress some of the historical and the contemporary grievances. The commitment to the fulfilment of the treaty relationship is embedded in our Green Party constitution, as is recognition of Māori as tangata whenua, and in that spirit, clearly, we do genuinely take real pleasure in seeing these settlements made over time. One of the perhaps secondary benefits of these settlements, clearly the primary benefits being the restoration, the redress, the recognition of mana, but I think a major secondary benefit, perhaps not often enough commented upon, is the fact within the documents, within the bills, what will become the Act, there is recorded the history of these events, of the lands and of the people, and of the actions that occurred over time. This bill, as do others, contains a narrative of how it is that we came to this place, to this position today. And these narratives, they're very accessible, they're very easy in one way to read, and for that reason they are of considerable benefit beyond the immediate benefits. Accessible, not easy to read in the sense that they do record over time the loss of land through illegal actions by the Crown and other agents. They record suffering, hardship over many years. They record the gradual erosion of the possessions and the well-being of people. But nevertheless, it's important that these documents are made available, and the fact that they are here and accessible is a major benefit, as I say. I would just reference a particular section of this bill that caught my eye, the reference to the fact that in the late 1840s, in this instance, that the Crown's land purchase policy was generally to acquire land at the cheapest possible price, in the belief that Māori would reap benefits in addition to the payment made for the land. In this instance, it's, to quote, it says that Ngati Apa agreed to the transaction at a lower price than their initial request or expectation, because they wished to obtain various benefits from the establishment of a European settlement in their vicinity, including peace, protection and prosperity. And these are very humble aspirations to wish for, quite low expectations, very reasonable expectations, that by fulfilling their part of the treaty relationship, they could reasonably expect a degree of peace, some protection from the Crown, and indeed a degree of prosperity. And sadly, of course, the history now tells us that none of these expectations were fulfilled. And it's to the benefit of this Parliament today that we do seek at least to put right some of that. And I guess I make these remarks in the context of having recently sat on a committee, as many of us have, and heard people who constantly refer to settlements and other forms of recompense to Māori as if they acknowledge some particular special privilege or some unearned benefit for Māoridom, rather than simply being quite minimal, paying back, returning what was taken, recompense, redress for the wrongs that have been done in the past. The notion of so-called special privilege that an uninformed but very vocal minority continues to insist upon clearly is at odds with the reality of all the social statistics that put Māori typically at the low end of the negative, or rather at the high end of all the wrong sorts of statistics. And clearly these settlements can give Māori in their own hands some resources, some tools, some ability to rebuild an economy, to rebuild the prosperity and the well-being that was sought so very many years ago. And it's to be hoped that those who choose to criticise these settlements and these bills will take the very small amount of time necessary to sit down with these documents, to read these very simple but very powerful narratives that actually tell the story of why it is necessary that we do recognise and make these redress in the appropriate time. And I would also join with others, I think, in acknowledging that this government, despite its various other shortcomings that we on occasion do comment upon, has actually seen the progress of a number of these settlements, and we do hope that that will continue, that settlements are made in a timely fashion, but without neglecting the opportunity, of course, for everyone to have their say and to ensure that we get appropriate settlements that do genuinely restore justice. So on that, I would just once again acknowledge the long battle, the long struggle for Ngati Apa to get to this point, and wish them very well into the future. Kia ora koutou.